Okay, today's daf is daf Zayin. We're going to start about 7 lines from the bottom on daf Vav Amud Bet. Now, what this is speaking about, this is kind of in the middle of a discussion, but it's important to start here with a new topic that's going to be taken up and sort of taken in another direction. So, the yesterday's daf was speaking about various constructions of an alleyway. So typically up till now we've been talking about an alleyway where 3 sides are closed. The back of the alleyway and the 2 sides are closed and only one side is open to the Reshut HaRabim, to the public domain. But yesterday the Gemara started taking up other kinds of mavoi. So for example, one that could be on a right angle. So you have 2 legs where one leg is perpendicular to the other. Or a mavoi that's shaped like a chet shape, where you have 2 legs and a piece in the middle. So it looks like a chet. So there's a mavoi like this. There's a cross piece, and then there's another mavoi that's parallel to the first one. So in total it looks like a chet shape. Okay, so the question that what was brought up yesterday was, how do we deal with a mavoi that is shaped in such an unusual way? Do we treat each leg like a separate mavoi that's actually closed with a door to another one? Or do we treat the whole thing as an open mavoi that's actually open on 2 sides? And an open mavoi that's open in both entrances into a public domain is treated more stringently than a mavoi that's closed. So this
there can be such a mavoi.
There could be, but the question is what the halachic implications of it are, you know.
And the ancient that was probably the most common type of situation.
Right, so a mavoi mifulash, what they call mifulash, means that it's open on both ends. It's just that there's a walkway. It's like a walkway. It's like an alleyway.
So both stringency would be that.
Don't jump to it. What it is yet, because it'll be confusing. So basically, this alleyway, if it were open on both ends to a public domain, and it's called the mavoi hamifulash. It's completely open. So there, everybody agrees it's more stringent than a mavoi satum, which is what we've discussed up till now. And you need something extra on one of the ends. Okay, you can't just have a lechi and a korah on both ends. You need either a tzurata petach, a doorway on one of the ends, or you're going to need actual doors on one of the ends. It's not going to be enough to have simply a lechi and a korah on both sides, because remember, for a mavoi satum where you have 3 walls in the mavoi and only one end is open, so all we need to put is a lechi on the side, right? A vertical bar, a vertical stick, or a horizontal stick over the top of korah. But that's all you need. But when you have open on both sides, so it's too open. We need something else to make it closed on one of the 2 sides. So either you need actual doors, or you're going to need a tzurata petach, you're going to need a form of a door. Now the question now there's 2 issues. Number 1 is, if it were really a mavoi hamifulash, what do you need to close that other side? Is it enough to have a tzurata petach? Is it enough to have the form of a door on one side, and the other open side just to put a lechi? Or do you need doors on that side? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, how do we deal with a mavoi that's shaped like a chet? That curves around like that. Do we treat it like a mavoi hamifulash, since it has 2 openings? Or do we treat it like a mavoi satum, since the 2 openings are on the same end? Or they're not, in other words,
nothing to do with each other.
Right, they're not, right. And also, in other words,
Reshut HaRabim? That's what I'm trying to
they both open to the Reshut HaRabim.
No, but which one is closed? In other words, I'm trying to understand.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm trying to understand what is stringent. Like stringent is when it's open on both sides, and I'm not.
When it's open on both sides, you have to put something more to close off one of the sides,
okay,
like either tzurata petach or doors to close off one of the sides. You can't just have a lechi on both sides when it's totally open like
because
that.
Otherwise, it won't be treated as a mavoi, and therefore
it'll be treated like a Reshut HaRabim. You won't be allowed to carry in it, right?
Okay.
So if it's curved around like a chet, so it's open, it has 2 openings to the Reshut HaRabim. So you might think it's considered like an open mavoi on 2 ends. Or you might say that since when you walk on one side of one leg of the mavoi, it ends somewhere, right? Because imagine a chet. So you're walking this way and it comes to an end, you have to turn right. Okay? So you could say, okay, that was mavoi number 1 and it has an end. It just has a door into mavoi number 2. So I walk down mavoi number 2 now, and I come around the other bend. So it's really 2 alleyways. It's not 1. So if you look at it that way, then it's satum really. It's really closed. It's not considered open. So there are two questions. What do you have to do to a wide open mavoi that's open on both ends? And is this considered a mavoi that's open on two ends? Now what happened in the Gemara was that they decided to take both stringencies. They decided to take the stringency of treating it like a mavoi mefulash, treating it like an open mavoi, and they also decided to treat it like to take the most stringent view on what you need to do with a mavoi mefulash, which is to put doors.
Just one more clarification question. So this assumed that it was already agreed that a mavoi that's open on both sides and it's a straight line is that there is a stringency on it?
There's some stringency. We just don't know exactly what it is.
What it is, but
is it doors or just a doorway? Yeah, everybody.
So the question is when it's a U, when it's open on both sides, but it's not a straight line.
Right, and the question is, what do you have to do with an open mavoi? So they took both stringencies. They took the stringency in the harda'ah. They took the stringency of treating it like an open mavoi, and they also took the stringency of what you need to do to fix an open mavoi. So that's why the very last words before the wide lines are that they took chumrei de Rav damar torato kamifulash. They took the stringency of Rav that it's considered an open mavoi. So v'ha'amar Rav halacha ketana kama, but didn't Rav say that with an open mavoi you can go with all you need is a tzurat petach. All you need is the form of a doorway. You don't need doors. But Kishmuel damar halacha kechananya, so they had to go like Shmuel, that halacha follows Chananya. Va'amar Shmuel torato kasatum, karav damar torato kamfulash. So basically, what they did was they took Shmuel's view that you need a very stringent tikkun, which is that you need to have doors, and they took the stringent view that it's considered an open mavoi and needs an extra addition to it. Okay, so they took two stringencies that actually represent two different opinions. Because Rav and Shmuel had a machloket, and they took the stringency of Rav to say that it was considered an open mavoi, and the stringency of Shmuel to say how you fix an open mavoi. Even though Shmuel himself wouldn't have required doors, because Shmuel actually said that this kind of setup is considered a closed mavoi, not an open one.
We're only talking about
the U shape. Okay, so Shmuel wouldn't require any special thing here because he considers it a closed mavoi anyway.
So why are we calling
Rav calls it because. In other words, if it were really an open mavoi, Shmuel would have a stringency.
Okay.
It just happens to be he wouldn't consider the U an open mavoi. And Rav considers it an open mavoi, but actually would say that all you need is a doorway. You don't need an actual door. You don't need actual doors. Okay. So what did they do? They took Shmuel's view that you need actual doors for an open mavoi, even though he himself would say that the U is not an open mavoi. And they took Rav's view that this is an open mavoi, even though he himself would say that all you needed was a doorway to close it, and they said we're going to put doors. So they took the stringencies of both. So now the Gemara says, and this is where we're going to start.
Maybe. What's the vikuach about the mavoi?
Yeah.
You can't carry mavoi. You can't carry talit. You can do anything in mavoi.
Yeah, because
as long as you don't go to the Reshut Harabim.
Right, but if it's not fixed at all, then it also is like a Reshut Harabim, and you can't carry in it at all.
Look at these pictures, Sammy, because what you have here
what there is to fix it?
When you have this alley with the lechi on the end, so that you don't go into the Reshut Harabim, if you don't put that lechi, you can't even carry in the mavoi itself, because we're worried that you're going to walk out.
Always a continuation.
Right, something. If you don't have anything, then you can't even carry in there at all, because we're worried that you're going to carry out. That's the reason. Now,
what did you want to show me?
Actually, you have similar pictures here. Not as pretty.
So let's. Right. The whole point is you can't carry it all if you don't have it. So the issue is, how do you fix it? Because they're not going to allow you to carry in a mavoi if it's not fixed, because you might carry it out. You're never allowed to carry out of the mavoi into the public domain. You're never allowed to. It's just that if it's not fixed, then you'll carry out. You're never allowed to carry from the mavoi into the public domain. But they can't even let you carry in the mavoi if there's a concern that you might. That's the whole logic. Now, Omi Avdinan Ketrei Chomrei. So now we get to this general methodological question, which is really interesting. Do we adopt two contradictory chumrot? And okay, how can we take the Chumra of Rav and the Chumra of Shmuel at the same time? We learned in a Braita, it says the halacha follows Beit Hillel, but a person who wants to follow Beit Shammai, he can do it. Okay, now he says Kedivrei Beit Hillel Ose Mikulei Beit Shammai. I'm sorry. So he says, right. So leolam halacha ke Beit Hillel, v'rotel asot kedivrei Beit Shammai, oseh kedivrei Beit Hillel oseh. Okay. So he says, if a person wants to follow Beit Shammai, he can follow it. If he wants to follow Beit Hillel, he can follow. Now this is before. The Gemara is going to explain that's not true today. We only follow Beit Hillel today. But mikulei Beit Shammai u mikulei Beit Hillel rasha. If a person says, you know what, I'm going to take the leniencies of Beit Hillel and the leniencies of Beit Shammai, that's a rasha, a wicked person. Right. Mechumrei Beit Shammai u mechumrei Beit Hillel. If a person says, I'm going to take the stringencies of Beit Shammai and also the stringencies of Beit Hillel, so Allah katuv omer kesil b'choshech holech. About this person, the Tanakh says that the fool walks in darkness. In other words, he's not consistent, and he's a fool because he's getting the worst of both worlds. He's getting the stringencies on both. Rather, if he's going to follow if he's going to follow Beit Shammai, he has to take kulehonu kechumrehon. He has to follow their leniencies and their stringencies. And if he's going to follow Beit Hillel, he follows leniencies and stringencies, not cherry picking either all leniencies. So all leniencies is a rasha because you're just looking to get around the system. All stringencies is a fool because why would you adopt the stringencies of both sides? So now, ha-gufa kasha, wait a second, there's an intrinsic contradiction, first of all, in this Braita. Why? Because amrat le'olam halacha ke Beit Hillel, because first it said the halacha follows Beit Hillel, and then it says, v'hadar amrat rotel lasot kedivrei Beit Shammai oseh. Then it says, if you want to do like Beit Shammai, you can do that, and if you want to do Beit Hillel, you can do that. How can you first say the halacha follows Beit Hillel, and then say it's up to you to decide what you want to do? That's not correct. So la kasha, no problem, kan kodem bat kol kan achar bat kol. There was a time where a divine voice came and pronounced that the halacha was going to follow Beit Hillel. So up to that time, it was still your choice. You could join the school of Beit Shammai, you could join the school of Beit Hillel. But at a certain point, it became established that the halacha was like Beit Hillel. Absolutely. But prior to that time, you had an option to follow one or the other. Alternatively, both of them were actually after the divine voice came forth. But this is Rabbi Yoshua, because according to Rabbi Yoshua, we don't use the bat kol to determine anything. So even after there was a divine voice that came and said that Beit Hillel was the definitive halacha, still you could follow Beit Shammai according to Rabbi Yoshua. Right.
We have the famous story. Right?
Yeah, the famous story about him. If you want to say, you could say, Hachikamar, this is what the Braita means. In other words, the problem in the Braita is that it first says that the halacha follows Beit Hillel, and then it says you could follow whatever you want. That kol echad mishkachat reitena eutrei amora de plige adadi ke'en machloket Beit Shammai or Beit Hillel. In other words, it doesn't mean literally that you can follow either Beit Hillel or Beit Shammai. We know the halacha follows Beit Hillel. That's what it says in the beginning. But what it means is that any time there's a machloket, like the machloket of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, you can do like either side. It's not speaking literally about Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Because Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, we know the halacha follows Beit Hillel, but it's saying anything similar to that, where there's a machloket between two schools of thought. It's like we call the discussions in the Talmud, Havayot da Abaye v'Rava. Arguments of Abaye and Rava, even though it's not always arguments of Abaye and Rava. It could be anybody, right? But that's just like the prototype. So they say, if there's a machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, you can follow either one. It doesn't literally mean that, because you have to follow Beit Hillel. But what it means to say is that if there is a machloket between the Chachamim, like the machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, lo li avad ki kulei demar v'ki kulei demar, v'lo ki chomrei demar v'ki chomrei demar, ela o ki kulei demar o ki chomrei avid, o ki kulei demar. What it means is that whenever there's a machloket, don't follow one tradition, the stringencies of one and the stringencies of the other, or the leniencies of one and the leniencies of the other. Adopt one system, one consistent way of going, and take both the chumrot and the kulot. So it's like people say, I really want to be Sephardic on Pesach because, you get to eat kitniyot and this and that. What about all the chumrot that you have to do? Oh, no, we don't want that. We only wanted the leniencies. Okay, well, that doesn't work that way. Or they say, I want to be Ashkenazi because I can do certain things that are allowed for Ashkenazim, maybe. So there are not that many benefits, but they're few. There are not that many benefits. But let's say they wanted to. Coming late, according to Sammy, that's for Ashkenazim. But I don't think... They say that we're late. Right? So, if whatever the benefits are, they say, I only want the leniencies, I don't want the stringencies, so that's not good. So you have to take one or the other way. So mikol makom kasha, but nonetheless it's a problem. The problem is the problem we said before, that in Nahar Da'ah they took this mavoi and they said we're going to go machmir like Rav and we're going to be machmir like Shmuel, even though they disagree with each other. Neither Rav or Shmuel in that case would have said that you need to put doors on the end. Shmuel would say you don't need to put doors on the end because he would say it's not considered an open mavoi, and Rav would say you don't need to put doors on the end because even if it is an open mavoi, which he says that it is, you don't need doors. So nobody would rule the way that they ruled. So why did they do that? So Mikol Makom Kasha, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Kulei Kirav Abdua, they really did everything like Rav in Nahar Da'ah, but the only thing is, Amar Ravuna Amar Rav, Halacha ben Morinkin, that Rav actually himself said, even though I hold you don't need doors in an open mavoi, all you need is tzurat petach. All you need is the shape of a doorway at one of the ends. So even if you had a mavoy mefulash, you had a mavoy that was open on both ends and it was a straight line, he wouldn't require doors at one of the ends. He would just require the form of a door. But he said, halacha in morinkin. This is the halacha, but we don't rule that way publicly. We advise people to do what Hananya said. Hananya said earlier, he was the Tana that said that you need doors. So even Rav, even though he privately maintained that you don't need doors, publicly, he said, we put doors. Well, the Rav,
what does he call the form of a doorway? A
form of a doorway is just the shape of a doorway, like what you have in a kitchen, where it looks like this, but there's no door.
But that means that if you just have this, like
what is
just
that?
a wall and a wall, that's not a doorway.
No, it has to have a top.
Right, so that's what he calls the form.
Yeah, like what you need for a mezuzah. It has to look like look at the elevator. There's no door. It's just the shape. The shape, top and two sides. Yeah, top and two sides. So Rav Adabar Amar Rav Amar Halacha Morinkin. But what about Rav Adabar Ahava's version of Rav? In Rav Adabar Ahava's version of Rav, not only does Rav say you don't need doors in an open mavoi, he says he explicitly says you can teach everybody this is the halacha that you don't need doors. So if that's the case, what are we going to say then? So we definitely have a contradiction, because Rav himself personally, if he had seen this U-shaped mavoi, would have said all you need is tzurat petach. All you need is the shape of a doorway, right?
And one of the entrance.
And one entrance. And the other one would have a lechi or a korah, like a regular mavoi. So, what are we going to do then? Amar Rav Shizvi says, Kilo abdinan kechumrei debeitzrei, echad desatrei adadeh. That when do we not follow the chumrot of two sides? That's only when they're contradictory. When the issues are contradictory. Okay? So Kegon, for example, Shidra v'gulgolet. Shidra and gulgolet is talking about a case where if you have a skull of a dead body in a house, it's mitameh be'ohel. We know that if there's a dead body in the house and you're under the same roof as a dead body, you become tameh. Even if certain body parts are under the same roof with you, you can become tameh, and one of them is a skull or the spine of a corpse will also convey tumah. It's not as it says in the Mishnah, Hashidra ba'gulgolet shechasru, that if you had a spine or a skull that are missing pieces, in other words, it's just a piece of a skull or a piece of a spine, but not an entire spine. So v'chama chisaron b'shidra, how much has to be missing that it will no longer convey tumat ohel, if you're underneath the ohel? So Beit Shammai says shtei chuliot, if it's missing two of the vertebrae. Ubeit Hillel omrim chulia achat. According to Beit Hillel, even if it's missing one vertebra, that is enough to say that it's incomplete, and since it's incomplete, it can't convey tum'ah through being under the same roof.
What if the vertebrae out of a whole spine? Out
of a whole spine, yeah. Ba'u ba'gulgolet Beit Shammai kimlo makadeach. According to Beit Shammai, if you had a hole the size of a hole that a drill makes in the skull, it's incomplete. Even a small deficiency, in other words. It has to be enough missing from the skull that if you would do this to a living person, they would die. In other words, a really significant amount has to be taken out of the skull for it to be incomplete. So Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are arguing what's considered incomplete. So what's the relevance? That so too with regard to trefa of an animal. Now what does that mean? It means the reverse. In other words, whatever Beit Shammai says needs to be missing. If Beit Shammai holds that missing 2 vertebrae is what makes a spine incomplete for the sake of tum'ah, and so if this spine is missing 2 vertebrae and it's under the same roof as you, you're not going to be tameh. If it's missing only 1, you are going to be tameh. So too in a trefa, if you find that there's an animal that was slaughtered and you look and the spine is missing only 1 of its vertebrae according to Beit Shammai, it's still going to be kosher. Right? Because it's still complete. Right, it's still complete. And if you had 2, but if it's missing 2, then it's going to be considered incomplete. And Beit Hillel, on the other hand, they're going to say that with regard to Tumah, even if it's missing 1 vertebra, it is incomplete, right? So if the spine is missing even 1 of the vertebra, then that means that if you're under the same roof as it, you're not going to become Tameh. But so too, they're going to have to be stringent on the other end. And if they find an animal that its spine is missing even 1 of the vertebrae, they're going to have to say it's a trefa. Because they're going to have to say it's incomplete. In other words, that's a case where the issue at hand, what an incomplete spine is, you have to be consistent. So if you're holding an incomplete spine is missing 1 of the vertebrae, then that's going to have sometimes implications. Right. It's going to have some implications that are lenient, and it's going to have some implications that are stringent.
Right. So
correct?
If you were to make a general statement on this, basically it's if you take a stringency on one area with regards to one law, based on, and that's the important part, based on a certain principle,
right,
you have to take that same...
The principle has to be consistent.
The principle has to be consistent.
The implications can be opposite.
It could be, exactly. In other words, you could change if the principle, the premise from which you took that is different.
Right. Now what you can't do... Right, what you couldn't do is, you couldn't do like this. When it comes to Tum'ah, I'm going to hold like Beit Hillel that it's not Tameh, but when it comes to a Trefa, I'm going to be like Beit Shammai and say that, no, 2 vertebrae are not missing, so for a Trefa, I'm going to say it's good. Right? Or the other way around, they're saying it's Tameh because it's only missing 1, and according to Beit Shammai, that's not enough. And then when it comes to Trefa, say, I'm going to be very religious, and even if it's missing 1, I'm going to say that it's incomplete. In other words, since the issue at hand is the same issue, you're twisting the principle. You got to have one principle. Is this complete or not? Okay. But when it's not contradictory, you can do it. So in our case, for example, it's not contradictory. The chumrot are not contradictory. Because one question is, what's the definition of an open mavoi? Okay, we can hold the stringent view like Rav. Or like Rav. And then the question is, what needs to be done to fix an open mavoi? Oh, well, we agree with Shmuel on that. The stringent way. It's totally different questions. It's not the same question. Then what happens to be that Rav and Shmuel on this particular case would never have ruled to put doors on the end. But that's only because each one maintains a principle about what the definition of an open mavoi is, and also a principle about how to fix an open mavoi. We're agreeing with Rav on one of his principles, namely what the definition of an open mavoi is, and we're agreeing with Shmuel on a different principle, which is how to fix an open mavoi. But we're not taking the same principle. We're not taking X in one case and Y in another case. It's 2 different principles at hand that we're ruling on, not the same principle being manipulated.
In which case, you could take both stringencies.
Yes,
you could, because they're 2 unrelated principles, right? It's like a contemporary case. This is when you do mincha and arvit, both of them before sunset. So if you're holding that before sunset is really right, that within an hour before sunset is considered the time for arvit, then how did you do mincha? If you considered it as the time for mincha, then how did you do arvit? So that's a case where, it's a problem, because you're taking 2 different, you're saying the same principle, and you're not being consistent. So, now we go on. So now the Gemara asks, is it really true that that we never when the principles are contradictory, we don't take two chumrot. Mativ Rav Mishasher raised an objection. Masev Rabbi Akiva shliket etrog be'echad b'shvat v'nahag bo bet isurin echad kedevrei Beit Shammai ve'echad kedevrei Beit Hillel. There's a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. When is the new year of the trees? Is the new year of the trees Tu B'Shvat or the first of Shvat? So Beit Shammai holds it's the first of Shvat. Okay, we hold, like Beit Hillel, it's the 15th of Shvat. So he went on the 1st of Shvat and he took an etrog. The problem is this etrog an etrog of the previous year or the new year? If it was and it was the second or the third year of the Shemitah cycle. So the second year of the Shemitah cycle has Maaser Sheni. The third year of the Shemitah cycle has Maaser Ani that goes to the poor person. The second year has Maaser Sheni, which you have to take to Yerushalayim and eat it. So the question is, which type of maaser is he supposed to take from this? As if it were taken from the second year of the Shemitah cycle, which is what Beit Hillel would say, or from the third year of the Shemitah cycle, which is what Beit Shammai would say, because it's already the first of Shvat. So he did both. He took some. He did both maaserot in that case. So how can he do that? It's contradictory. It's contradictory. Because if the first of Shvat is really from the previous year, it can't be from the coming year. If it's from the coming year, it can't be the previous year. I mean, you can't have both. So the answer is that Rabbi Akiva Gemare istapekle. Rabbi Akiva wasn't being machmir for both. He wasn't saying, I'm going to adopt both principles. You can't do that. He wasn't sure about who said what. So this is important because, in other words, he wasn't sure what to do because he wasn't sure what the halacha was. He wasn't sure whether Beit Hillel was the one that said that the new year started on the 1st of Shvat or the 15th of Shvat, and since he wasn't sure, he did both. So he wasn't adopting two different principles. He wasn't saying, I'm going to be so religious that I'm going to adopt both Beit Shammai's view about what an incomplete spine is, and also Beit Hillel's view about what an incomplete spine is, and whenever the implication is stringent, I'm going to change my principles to have the stringent implication. He didn't say that. He said, I don't know which principle is correct. So saying I don't know which principle is correct is a legitimate reason to be stringent. Saying I know that there are two competing principles and I'm just going to pick whichever one generates a lenient view or whichever one generates a mahmir result in every given case, that's the wrong thing. But not knowing what the principles are, we understand. So like for example, on Shabbat, on Friday night, we're mahmir and we say that nighttime starts at sundown. On Saturday night, we're mahmir and we say no, nighttime starts at Tzeit HaKochavim, when the stars come out. So we end up having a 25-hour Shabbat instead of 24 hours. Because why? Because we don't know. We're not sure. We're not contradicting ourselves, we're just not sure. So since we're not sure which is correct, so on Friday night we take the stringent view, and on Saturday night we take a different stringent view, simply because we don't know which one is the real beginning of night.
Is that the reason in Baruch HaShulchan who says that you can do mincha like before after Shkia one time, and Arvi before after Shkia one time, and then reverse it the next day?
There are three different opinions. There's an opinion that says, there's the really very lenient opinion that says you can actually even do it on the same day. Then, the Shulchan Aruch says that you should take one opinion consistently.
Right, but Aruch HaShulchan says you could flake back and forth.
But there are some that say that if on that given day you are consistent, that's enough.
Right. I think that's what Aruch HaShulchan says.
Yeah, some say it could be, but there are Rishonim that say that. No. Okay, so now we move on. So Yativ Rav Yosef Kamei the Rav Huna Yativ Amar Rav Yosef sat in front of Rav Huna and he sat and said, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, Machloket bisratya mikan, usratya mikan, uplatya mikan, aval sratya mikan, ubikam mikan, ubikam mikan. So what is he saying? He's saying this whole argument about a mavoya mifolash, about a mavoy that is open on both sides, is only talking about where it's open. Now remember, the machloket was, do you need doors on one of the sides and just a lechi, a one beam on the other side, or do you need just a tzurat petach, just the form of a door on one side and a lechi on the other side? So he says that this whole machloket is only when both ends of the mavoi open to a full-fledged reshut harabim. So, for example, a sratya or a platya. Sratya and platya are like thoroughfares or plazas that it opens directly to, serious reshut harabim. But if it opens on a reshut harabim on one side, but the second side opens to a bik'ah, to a valley, which is a karmelit, it's not a thoroughfare. It's not really designated for walking through. It's just like a field, like we learned in Masekhet Shabbat. Or there's a valley on both sides, so it's a karmelit on both sides. It's only rabbinically prohibited to carry in a karmelit. It's not a real reshut harabim that's used as a thoroughfare. So if that's the case, then everybody agrees you only need a tzurat petach on one side, only the form of a doorway on one side, and a lechi, the one stick that's vertical, or the korah, the horizontal stick, on the other side. In other words, this whole machloket about when you need doors, and there were other opinions too, some saying, Beit Shammai saying you needed doors on both sides, and then a discussion about what Beit Hillel actually held. So this whole discussion that was only relevant where there's a full-fledged reshut harabim on both sides of this alley that's going straight from point A to point B. Point A is a reshut harabim and point B is a reshut harabim. But if it's anything less than a reshut harabim on both sides, then it doesn't count. So now the Gemara asks then the Gemara asks, one second, let me find my place. Hashtas ratya mikan uvik'a mikan osel l'torah petach. So wait a second, you told me already that if there's ratya mikan uvik'a mikan, if there's a public thoroughfare or a square on one side, then and a bik'ah and a valley on the other side. In other words, one side is reshut harabim, one side is only a karmelit. That you just have to put a form of a doorway on one side, and you can put a lechi on the other side, and you're good. But if that's the case, so he says, if in that case, so bikam mikan mibaya. So why do you have to give me the extra case of where there's a valley on both sides? I mean, if there's a full shuk on one side, it's a reshut harabim on one side, plaza on one side. The other side is a valley, and you already told me that there you only need a form of a doorway on one end and a lechi on the other end, because it's not a reshut harabim on both ends. But if that's the case, then having why do you need the other case of having a valley on both ends? A valley on both ends is obvious. If having an actual reshut harabim on side A and a valley on side B is more lenient, so certainly having a valley on both sides is more lenient, correct? That should be obvious. So why do you need that? So the answer is, that's what it means. That what it meant was that there's no difference. What it was trying to emphasize was that if there's a reshut harabim on one side of the alley, and there's a valley on the other side of the alley, it's as if there was a valley on both sides. In other words, it doesn't require the same special improvement on one of the sides that it would require if it were wide open to a public domain on both sides. Because if even one of the sides is just a karmelit, certainly if both of them are, then it becomes more lenient all of a sudden.
This is what they're talking about here, right? So it's here, there is a...
No, we're not up to that case yet. No, let me see if they have a picture of this. That case is the next case.
In other words, it's straight, there is a thoroughfare,
it doesn't really have a picture of this yet. No, it's just open, wide, straight. And then on one side you go to a public domain, on the other side you go to a backyard or something. Anything. Doesn't even matter. Okay. So, or a valley, it says. A valley.
Yeah, I thought that's over here. I don't know why they have...
We're not up to that yet, because we're not up to that case yet. That's a more complicated case. That's a more complicated case. That's what's coming up. So now, U'misayim ba'mishmei de Rabbi Yehuda. And they concluded in the name of Rabbi Yehuda as follows, that im hayam avoy kale l'rechava. That's what you see. That if the mavoy is like this, structured as follows, that there's a mavoy, the mavoy opens, okay, here's Reshut Harabim, that's a street, you see that? Mm-hmm. That's Rockville Pike there. Here's the mavoy here, and what happens is it opens to a back lot, a rechava, and then the rechava opens to the Reshut Harabim. So really, what are you going to do? What are people going to do? They want to go from this Reshut Harabim to this Reshut Harabim. They're going to come in through the mavoy. They're going to pass through this backlot rechava, and they're going to go to another Reshut Harabim. So what might you think? Basically, the Mavoi is still functioning to take you from Reshut Harabim A to Reshut Harabim B. So what difference does it make that there's a Rechava in the middle?
Right.
Okay, the Carmelit. So see, the Carmelit is a place you're not allowed to carry because it's open, but it's not. It's only rabbinically prohibited to carry there because it's a Carmelit. Okay, so he says, "Eno tzarich klum." That mavoi doesn't need anything because it doesn't directly open to the Reshut Harabim. It opens first to a Carmelit and only then to a Reshut Harabim. So since carrying in that Carmelit, that Rechava is itself only rabbinically prohibited, we don't require you to make a special tikkun on the end of the mavoi for that reason. Okay?
But rabbinically, you're still not allowed to carry there, so you still...
In that Rechava.
Wait, so they're
So
saying...
you still have to be aware.
You still have to be aware. But there would be an extra gezerah. Yes?
So it doesn't require neither. Where is the picture?
Over here. On this end, where it borders the Reshut Harabim, it requires lechi.
So they're saying you need nothing neither here
On the side.
nor here.
Right, on the side that leads
Neither
into this
nor here.
open space between the houses or in the back of the houses. It looks like it's the shared backyard here. So in that area, you don't need any lechi on that end. On the end that faces the actual Reshut Harabim, of course, you do need a lechi like you would normally need because that's because they're not going to make a gezerah on a gezerah. A gezerah, you might carry in the Rechava, and if I do, so what? It's only rabbinically prohibited anyway. So, Amar le Abaye Rav Yosef, Abaye said to Rav Yosef, Ha de Rav Yehuda de Shmuelhi. It must be that what you learned in Rav Yosef, what you learned in, that Rav Yehuda said, because remember, Rav Yosef is the teacher of Abaye, and Rav Yosef heard this from Rav Huna. So he said, what you heard must have been a teaching of Shmuel, not Rav. Why? Because Ti'i de Rav, Kashia de Rav betarte. Because if it's Rav, if that was reported in the name of Rav, that idea that if a mavoi opens to a back lot, that it doesn't require any tikkun, that isn't true. That wouldn't fit Rav. Da Amar Rav Yirmiyah Amar Rav, because Rav Yirmiyah Bar Rabba said in the name of Rav, mavoi shenifrat b'milu'o lechatzer. Let's say a mavoi is opened, broken through to a chatzer. What this means is that you had a 3-walled mavoi, like the typical mavoi satum that we started talking about, that's closed on one end. And it's closed on 3 sides and it's only open on one end. But the back of the mavoi broke through and now goes into a chatzer. It goes into a courtyard that previously wasn't connected to it at all. Because previously the back wall of this mavoi faced this chatzer. But and I guess they shared a wall, right? The wall of the mavoi was, only seen as an outer wall in the chatzer. It wasn't. This chatzer didn't have access to this mavoi because it was closed. Now it broke through. So in that case, v'nifritza chatzer kenegdo chatzer muteretu mavoi asur. So what happens? Our mavoi breaks that we can walk into the chatzer now through the back of the mavoi. But the only thing is that the chatzer itself had a breach in its wall going into the Reshut Harabim. So what do you have? A very similar case to what we just discussed, right? Because now the mavoi is leading into a place where it's prohibited to carry, let's say, chatzer, which is just like the lot. It's open into the courtyard, and here's the picture. It's open into the courtyard like this. And the courtyard itself is now open to the Reshut Harabim. Right. So when you come out of the mavoi, what do you come out into? You come out into a chatzer. Directly into a chatzer. And when you walk from the chatzer, you go directly into the Reshut Harabim. So it's just like when the mavoi opens to a back lot behind the houses over here. And from the back lot, you can go right into the public domain. It's the same exact thing. What's the difference? And Rav there says that you cannot carry in the mavoi now. You can carry in the chatzer because the people in the chatzer don't have a problem. They made an eruvei chatzerot. They're allowed to carry in their chatzer, and having a hole in their wall is no problem as long as it's less than 10 amot wide. It's not a problem for them. But for the people of the mavoi, it's a problem because now they're in a mavoi that leads directly or indirectly, into a Reshut Harabim. No, because the mavoi itself, because the mavoi goes now, opens directly via the chatzer into the public domain.
So why is it the fact
So it's just like the back lot issue.
The fact that they did the Rivit Chatzero to make changes.
It's not going to help the people of the mavoi, it only helps the people of the chatzer.
Right.
The people of the chatzer can carry in their own chatzer, and it's no problem that it has a hole to the Reshut Harabim because it's just a hole in the wall and it's less than 10 amot. The people in the mavoi now are carrying in a mavoi mifalash, It's a mavoi that's mifulash, that's open on both ends because one end broke, and it's a stone's throw away from the actual public domain. Because now all I need to do is walk through the chatzer, and they have a hole in their wall too, and I can walk straight into the public domain. So it's just like this case where you have the mavoi that's open into a back lot behind houses, which itself opens. Let's say it opens to a parking lot or whatever, which itself opens to the Reshut HaRabim. It's exactly the same case.
Okay, so
And Rav says you can't carry in that mavoi.
But I don't understand the difference between that and the previous case.
There isn't one. That's the point. That's what they're trying to say.
Right. Oh,
If there were, then it would make any sense. Right. In other words, that's what they're saying. They're saying it's exactly the same case, except that in this case it happened by accident, obviously, because the wall broke.
Is disagreeing?
He's saying Rav obviously cannot agree with you,
right?
Because Rav is saying that. Rav is saying that you can't carry in a mavoi. You're saying that it's no problem. You can carry in a mavoi, even though it opens to an open space that itself that's behind houses, that itself opens to a public domain. And let's say even if you were allowed to carry in that open space, we don't even have to say that you're not allowed to carry in that open space. We don't have to say it's rabbinically prohibited. Maybe they made an eruv chatzerot of the back lot behind the houses too. Maybe you're allowed to carry there. I'm just saying, even for argument's sake, you couldn't. It would only be rabbinically prohibited. But the point is that there's something in between the mavoi and the public domain. That something is not itself the mavoi and is not itself the public domain. But it's wide open to the public domain. So it's the same thing here. The mavoi is broken on the back. You could walk right through it, walk right through that chatzer, right to the public domain. So it's the same thing. And Rav says you can't carry in the mavoi, apparently because it's a direct route to the public domain with no break, with no stop. Okay? And he says the people in the chatzer can continue to carry. Now it said that there were two contradictions between this and Rav. And Rashi explains that apparently he says that what's the reason of two? He says because number one, because you see that even though it's wide open, so what was reported in the name of Rabbi Yehuda was that even though it's wide open to the public domain, since there's an intervening space there that's not the mavoi and not a public domain, you're allowed to carry in that mavoi according to Rabbi Yehuda, whereas Rav is saying no. That's contradiction number one. Contradiction number two is that you would think that it would seem that he says that mishum mifulash mishum nifratz lechatzer va'asrei alei bnei chatzer the nifratz mavoi b'miluo lereshuta asuralo. That it seems like the other problem is you can't carry in the mavoi because the chatzer doesn't have a relationship with the mavoi. Right? This chatzer is not part of this mavoi because it's closed. The mavoi was closed to this chatzer before. And now that you're wide open to a chatzer, why can you not carry? For two reasons. First of all, because it leads directly into the Reshut HaRabim, but even because it leads to this chatzer. And since we're not part of this chatzer, we're not allowed to carry in this chatzer because we're not part of their eruv that they made. And so therefore, we're not allowed to carry in the mavoi because of the people of the chatzer that are going to pass through here now. And we're not a part of their team. So we shouldn't be able to carry in there for that reason. So this teaching of Rav is telling you two things in distinction to what we learned before, in contradistinction, because before we said that if this mavoi is open to this back lot, even though you're not part of that back lot, and maybe you can't carry in that back lot, it doesn't prevent you from carrying in the mavoi, and it doesn't prevent you from carrying in the mavoi the fact that you could go directly from that mavoi to the public domain, since it's open in the back, and you could walk through the back lot and get there. Okay? Rav is saying that both of these things are an issue. It's an issue because you can pass straight through that chatzer into the public domain, and it's an issue because since now you're open to a chatzer that you are not allowed to carry in, even though the chatzer is enclosed, you had to be part of the eruvei chatzerot to be able to carry in their chatzer, and you're not part of their eruvei chatzerot, so that's another reason why you can't carry in the mavoi. So this is two ways in which Rav is disagreeing with the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so he said, "Ve'amai." If you're going to tell me that this statement of Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rav, so he said, if that's the case, it should be the same as the case before. In other words, however you treat the first case of Rabbi Yehuda should be the same as this. And the fact that Rav is saying that here you're prohibited from carrying in the mavoi shows you that he would prohibit you also from carrying in a case where the mavoi opens directly to the back lot, which opens to the public domain. Amar le said to him, "Ana lo yadana." I don't know the answer. Okay, Ovda hava bedura diravata. There was an event. There was a situation that happened in the village of shepherds. That mavoy shekalal rechava hava. That there was a mavoy that opened to a back lot, which itself opened to a public domain. Va'atal kamed Rav Yehuda, and they came to Rav Yehuda, v'lo atzrechei v'lo midi, and he didn't require them to do anything, which is in accordance with the statement that he said before, that if it opens to a back lot and the back lot opens to the public domain, even if the back lot didn't make an eruv with the people of the mavoy, so they weren't allowed to carry in the back lot, it doesn't matter. Since it's only rabbinically prohibited, and even though it leads into the public domain, it's not a problem. Right? So he says that if it's difficult to attribute this to Rav, so then we'll just attribute it to Shmuel. It's no problem. We can just say that it was Shmuel that said it. It wasn't Rav. And Shmuel and Rav disagree about this case, where you lead from a mavoy directly into a shared space where you're not allowed to carry rabbinically, and that itself is open to a public domain. So they argue about that. So, but Hashtad Amar le Rav Sheshet le Rav Shmuel bar Abba va'amre le Rav Yosef bar Abba. But now that we know that Rav Sheshet said to Rav Shmuel bar Abba, and some say it was to Rav Yosef bar Abba, as beralach, I'll explain to you. Kan she'erevu, kan shelo erevu. Derav aderav nami lo akashia, kan she'erevu, b'nei chatzer, im b'nei mavoy, kan shelo erevu. Basically, he says that the distinction can be made between a case where they made an eruv and where they didn't make an eruv. Okay? The distinction is like this. That in the case of the mavoy shenifratz, in the case where the back of the mavoy became broken through, where Rav says you can't carry in that mavoy because it's open to the chatzer, and the chatzer is open to the public domain, that's not why he says you can't carry in the mavoy. It's not because the chatzer is open to a public domain. That doesn't bother Rav. What bothers Rav in the mavoy is that the people of this mavoy did not make an eruv with this chatzer. Why didn't they make an eruv with this chatzer? Because previously they were sealed off from that chatzer. Why would they make an eruv with them? They didn't have any passageway to that chatzer. Why would they have had an eruvei chatzerot or a shitufei mivoot with that chatzer when they have no connection? So now their wall broke, but they never made an eruv with them. That's why you can't carry in the mavoy. Because since the Bnei Chatzer now, the people of the Chatzer are going to pass through this mavoy to get to the public domain since the wall broke, and the people of the mavoy don't have a relationship with the people of the Chatzer where they could consider their space shared amongst all of them, now the mavoy becomes a prohibited place to carry because it directly borders on a place where they don't share an eruv, and therefore there can't be passageway. In other words, there can't be carrying in that mavoy because it's connected now to a place that it doesn't have an eruv with. But in the case of the mavoy that opens to a back lot, it was constructed that way from the beginning to open to the back lot. And therefore, because it was constructed from the beginning to open to the back lot, they make an eruv with the people of the back lot because they know that the people of the back lot are going to use that mavoy to go out. Just like the chatzerot, they usually open from the sides of the mavoy. So the courtyards that are opening into the mavoy are coming from the side. The end of the mavoy is open to this back lot. People are also going to come through there to use the mavoy. So what did the people of the mavoy do? They make up an eruv with with the people that use that back lot.
But then it's not a mavoy, it's a Carmelite.
No, it's enclosed. It's enclosed.
Yeah.
It's like a chatzer. It's like a chatzer. Let's assume that they made it a chatzer. So whenever you have an eruv, it's no problem. When you don't have an eruv, since it's a direct passageway from the place you don't have an eruv with into this mavoy, it's a problem. You can't have this kind of a setup. So it's not because it's so close to the Reshut HaRabim. It's not because Rav says, well, since you could walk into the back lot and directly from there into the Reshut HaRabim with no stopping, therefore it's considered like a mavoy that opens directly into the Reshut HaRabim. That's not what he's saying. His only reason for not allowing you to carry in that mavoy was because the presumption was that since the wall broke, they never made an eruv with the people of the Chatzer. And now the Chatzer people are going to be going back and forth through this mavoy, and since they don't have an eruv with them, they can't consider it all one entity. But in the case where it opens to the back lot, it could be considered all one entity because we assume that the people of this community made an eruv, and that allows people to carry from this back lot into the mavoy, from the mavoy into the back lot. And the fact that it's open, wide open to the Rishut Harabim doesn't make a difference. And that's the way that the Gemara concludes. And we're going to conclude exactly here today with the last word of the Amud. And pick up, Bezrat Hashem, we'll pick up our Shiur on Sunday, but continue tomorrow.